Alright, and we're back again. Again, my name is Mike Malone. This is Micah Talks History. Today I'll be redoing my Jacksonville Explained video. Just didn't like the way that the video came out yesterday. Decided to switch to a different position and try again. Alrighty, so I am away from my whiteboard, but I did draw a little map here. Hopefully this comes out at the right angle, so that you're able to see everything spelt correctly and not mirrored like I'm seeing it right now. But in the off chance that it does not come out that way, that will be unfortunate. But just, I guess, follow along with what I'm at least saying. So, just a little bit of the heads up for the area. Also, I'm going to try and make this video shorter than the one I filmed yesterday was. We got Georgia up here. We got Georgia along here. The St. Mary's River divides the state of Georgia and Florida a good ways headed west. We have, again, Florida down here, starting from the St. Mary's River. We have St. Mary's to town. Over here, it's a nice small little town. It's one of the main ways you can get over to Cumberland Island. It's a little nature preserve sort of park there, island. We have Fernandina Beach coming over into Florida here, and also we have Amelia Island. Little Talbot Island over here. Jacksport. Over in this general area of Jacksonville, this is an area called Yulee. It's pretty like backwoods and like, it's relatively rural, I guess you could say. We have Jacksonville, the downtown over here, along the St. Johns River. And crossing the St. Johns River from San Marco to Jacksonville, we have the Main Street Bridge or the John T. Alsop Bridge, whichever you'd rather call it. John T. Alsop was an individual of significance in Jacksonville's history, and so they named the bridge after him at some point. But a lot of people just call it the Main Street Bridge because it follows Main Street through downtown Jacksonville. Over here, and you might be able to realize that the map isn't drawn exactly to scale. I didn't draw it 100% accurately, so as you can see, the Hart Bridge here is a green bridge. Excuse me, there's a blue bridge, a green bridge, and a red bridge in Jacksonville. When I was growing up, that's what I knew them by. But when I got older, I figured out the names. Main Street is the blue bridge, blue suspension bridge. And then also there's the Hart Bridge, which is a green one, and the Matthews Bridge, which is a red one. Matthews Bridge heads over into the Arlington area, and Hart Bridge sort of does as well, coming into like the south of the Arlington area. So, yeah. And then, yeah, Jacksport over here, like I said, Mayport, which is the U.S. Navy installation in the area, U.S. Navy Air Force, Naval Air Station, right here. That's for any, like, I guess, Air Force, naval planes working in tandem with the Navy, and so they land over here in this general area. We got San Marco again over here, some older houses. And then we have Southside and Bay Meadows as well. And then Mandarin down here. St. Augustine is way south. It's not in this video. I'm going to do one of these on St. Augustine at some point, but yeah, that's coming sooner or later. And then we have, hang on, and then we have the three beaches here, I guess you could say. Hang on, let's see if I can get this to the right. There we go. We have Atlantic Beach, Neptune Beach, and Jacksonville Beach, and the whole area is called Jack's Beach. Alright, and that should be all of the map. Yes. Alright, and with that out of the way, I'll bring up the map in just a second, but let me start talking about the history of Jacksonville itself. So, pre-1564, this area was this area was traversed by like native tribes, and they'd used the St. Johns River as a means of transporting goods, and also a lot of fishing went down over here, and then also trade. So they persisted in that up until 1564, when the French Huguenots came over from continental Europe, and so they established Fort Caroline, which is technically older than St. Augustine. It was right here. It was like in the north of the Arlington area, right off the St. Johns River. It came in through the Atlantic Ocean and went up to St. John's. So technically it's older than St. Augustine, but in 1565, the Spanish under Pedro Menendez de Avilés attacked and destroyed the fort. So that is primarily why, like, another one of the reasons why the French weren't as established in the New World, as they called it, is because a lot of their colonies would get destroyed either by the English or the Spanish. The Spanish at this point then built St. Augustine to the south of the Jacksonville area, and that became the oldest continual settlement in continental United States. So technically it was the French, but they didn't actually stick around, you could say. So yeah, the Spanish proceed to use St. Augustine as like their main, I guess, control over the northern part of Florida, at least. And so, like, they build a fort there and a lot of other stuff, but I'll talk about that at some other time. But the Spanish have control over Florida for most of this, pretty much all of this up until like the 17 and 1800s. They sparsely settle the area of Jacksonville itself. At some point in the early 1800s, it's called Cow Ford because they're like sending cattle across the St. John's River. But yeah, the Spanish don't really do anything really with the Jacksonville area because most of everything they have is like focused in the St. Augustine area at this period of time. So by the year 1822, the U.S. has acquired Florida from Spain during the Adams-Onis Treaty of 1819 and the actual transfer in 1821. And the settlement that, I guess the Cow Ford area of settlement, you could call it, is renamed Jacksonville after Andrew Jackson, who was the military governor of the Florida Territory in 1821. So, yeah, they proceed to establish Jacksonville there, the U.S., I mean, and it goes pretty much just as like a shipping hub for the Atlantic and like a lot of the Florida area, as well as a lumber hub as well. And so, just a lot of trade and transport goes on there in Jacksonville up until the 1830s and 1850s. During the 1830s and 1850s, and then by the time the Civil War has started, Florida ends up seceding with a lot of the southern states to join the CSA, Confederate States of America. So essentially the Union has to retake Jacksonville, and so they're able to do that in a large part of like the way it's like set up, you could say, because the Union, they have like pretty much almost complete naval control over the seas during the Civil War, because they have like, again, like the actual Navy. Like the CSA didn't have a Navy when they split, and they couldn't really form one. Like they were just mostly just running blockades and stuff, but the Union is able to blockade most of the CSA, and so they're able to just sail right up through Jacksonville, or right up through the St. Johns River to Jacksonville. And since Jacksonville's like right on the St. Johns River, they're able to just like take it over and control it. But since they're not able to like actually establish like a complete and total presence there, it just switches hands between the CSA and the Union all throughout the Civil War in 1861 to 1865. So that continues on until the end of the Civil War. But at that point, Jacksonville just ends up as like part of the Union again, part of like Reconstruction and everything, and then so that continues up until May 3rd, 1901, when one of the most important events in Jacksonville's history happens, the Great Fire. So, the Great Fire of 1901, or the Great Fire, either one. But, so that takes place in Jacksonville. If you've heard of the Chicago Fire, I'll talk about it at some point, but it's something like that, sort of similar scale. So, 2,000 buildings end up getting destroyed during the fire, and 10,000 people are left homeless afterward. And it's one of the worst urban fires in U.S. history. And I'm sure also Chicago Fire is up there with that. But Jacksonville is able to bounce back from this. The people are able to use this opportunity to like rebuild everything and make it more modern, add some like better urban planning and everything. And so after the fire, Jacksonville just becomes like a major transportation and naval hub and shipping and everything. Jacksport, like I was saying, and it ends up becoming the biggest city in the continental U.S. by land area. So that is more or less it. Thanks for sticking around. This video is almost 10 minutes long, and I'm going to cut it off right now. See ya.